That, of course, was Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction, the signature film about obsessive lovers and stalking. Now, we talked last week about romantic fixation becoming dangerous, but tonight we may have what perhaps is the worst case scenario. Take a look at this. Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander were young adults with bright futures. For a time, it looked like a storybook romance. But when Travis broke up with Jodi, it became more of a suspense thriller. There were reports of obsessive text, harassment, even slashed tires. Then, on June 9, 2008, friends discovered Travis's body.
A friend of ours was dead in his bedroom with lots of blood.
He had been shot in the face, stabbed 27 times, and his throat was slit from ear to ear. Friends told police about Jodi, and weeks later she was arrested. The evidence, damning. Obsessive jealousy, DNA allegedly linking Arias to the crime, and a bloody handprint police say is hers. Investigators say they even have pictures of the body taken by the killer. The case feels disturbingly like that of Casey Anthony. A shocking murder, a beautiful femme fatale, and an elaborate, improbable alibi. And there are similarities between their behavior behind bars. Is Jodi Arias the next Casey Anthony? Well, the case, of course, shocked the community, devastated Travis Alexander's family and friends, and created a media frenzy. So we're going to discuss this with a panel. Joining me is criminal defense attorney Mark Eiglarsh, criminal profiler Pat Brown, and true crime author Shanna Hogan. Police say they recovered a camera at the scene with even sexually explicit images and a picture of Travis's dead body. Pat, what the heck? Help us understand why a murderer would take a picture of the body.
Well, she was enjoying herself at that point, Dr. Drew. I really want to bring something up. We tend to give women too much of a break. Let's reverse the roles here. Let's assume this was a guy who did this. We've seen so many of these cases where the girl breaks up with the guy and he obsesses about her and he calls her and he says, let me see you one more time or let's get back together. She is nice. She goes to give him closure. They have a talk. She says, no, I don't want to get back together. And all along he's planned, if she says no, I'm going to kill her. And he does. And this is all I see happening with Jodi. Same type of thing. She gave him his chance. He turned it down at the end. She killed him. So if she were a guy, we wouldn't even be talking about this. We just call him a psychopath and a creep and a domestic abuser, and we put him away. Because it's a woman, we're like, ooh, what are her problems? I wonder why she thinks this way. I wonder what happened in her childhood. We give her too much of a break. She is what she is, a cold-blooded murderer.
Well, Pat, I like that profile, but you said she's enjoying herself when she was killing him. That's why she took the picture. There are really freakish cases where people sort of get off on the murderers. Is that what you're implying here with her?
Absolutely. In all of these cases where you have a domestic abuser, in a sense that's what she was, a stalker, someone obsessed with a guy, someone who can't accept the fact that he would dump her and she would lose, she has to have that final moment of winning. That's the big thrill. It's like, okay, you turn me down, you are not going to walk away from this. I am going to win. And so at that moment, she is thrilled because she has actually, she's beaten him, and he's never going to get to go off with those other women anymore.
Okay, so it's the power and the thrill. It's not some weird sexual thing as it sometimes is.
No, I think she's just thrilled that she got to say checkmate.
All right, Mark, what do you think this all means for the case?
Well, the good news is that prosecutors in this case and in every murder case never has to prove motive. Pat's theory is a good one, and she's good at what she does, but there could be other reasons and other feelings that she had when she was killing him. The good news is we don't have to speculate. When her bloody handprint is on the wall and it's mixed with the decedent's blood, and also you've got statements that are inconsistent. One minute there's two people that burst into the house and killed him. Next minute, oh yeah, I did it in self-defense. That coupled with all the physical evidence, this is similar to Casey Anthony in that apparently God gave her a pretty shell, but it's very different because the evidence seems to be overwhelming, linking her to the crime scene and the body itself.
Yeah, Mark, I'm tempted to get out my cowboy hat. You and I have sat in these satellite windows before, discussed this exact same scenario, it seems like. And as Pat is saying, this is not all that uncommon. But I've done a lot of thinking about Casey Anthony since that case happened. And it's increasingly clear to me in her case that there was something neurobiologically wrong. Even though I talked to a psychiatrist that didn't detect it, they really didn't do that kind of testing. I'm convinced of that. Do you think that that's the kind of thing that's going on here? This is let's call it a diseased brain, if you want to call it anything else. And does that mean anything for this case? It's just sort of proving it and that's it? Is that all that's required?
It depends which phase we're talking about. They're seeking the death penalty in this case, so if she's found guilty, what you're talking about will have a lot of relevance in the penalty phase. They'll come up with reasons why she did it, why you should spare her life. But in the guilt phase, if I'm the prosecutor, I stay away from that because you start to get into speculation. You don't need to. Did she do it? Yes. Was it first-degree murder? Hell yeah. Bye-bye.
Okay, author Shanna Hogan, or Shanna, I think your name is pronounced, I'm sorry. You have covered this case extensively, and we're drawing some, we're drawing some similarities here to old Casey Anthony, the changing alibis, the story changes, the lies, the distortion, the strangely sort of, lackadaisical attitude in jail. Can you expand on this for us?
I definitely see similarities between Jodi Arias and Casey Anthony. These are both beautiful young women in the prime of their lives. These are both women who committed the most unthinkable acts imaginable. And they're both well-documented liars. Jodi Arias has
Shanna, I got to interrupt you. I have to interrupt you real quickly. There's a video playing alongside of you. If the controller would reset that video again, I would appreciate it. It's still rolling, but set it again with the two of the Casey. There they are. I want the viewers to just use your gut and look at those two women and trust what your gut tells you when you look at them and you think about the stories that are playing out in their lives. Just think about that feeling you get. It is a very peculiar feeling that I personally am not accustomed to. If you really tune in to what they evoke. So I'm sorry, Jodi, Shanna rather, keep telling us about this. What she did behind bars, because that's kind of what we're looking at right now.
Yeah, and I think what Pat said earlier is right. Throughout history, women have been dismissed as being killers because they thought they were too demure or too innocent to commit such a horrible act. And what we've learned in the last couple decades is that they are every bit as capable of doing the most heinous acts, just as men are.
And Pat, do you know what I'm talking about when I looked at that video? I don't know if you're able to see the video. I'm watching at the same time, but these women evoke a strange, eerie emptiness when you look at them. At least in me, that's what is evoked.
That's pretty typical of psychopathy. They almost have this deadness in their eyes, and after you've been in contact with them, you just want to go home and take a shower. It's like you've been with a snake. And what's very interesting, which we're going to probably see happen, I think she'll get convicted because the evidence is overwhelming. But what happens after these women get in prison is that we see they immediately start getting fan clubs because they do have this outwardness that they can, this friendliness they can put out there, and they can start saying, oh, they were either abused women, and that's why you should feel sorry for me, or I went crazy, I don't remember any of it. And they'll have some excuse, and there'll be this huge fan club, and they'll be trying to set her free because she's this poor, beautiful, abused woman. And it's really appalling when we see that happen for the family of the victim.
Yeah, that will be very interesting to see if that in fact happens. I'll be anxious to pull together a jury of those folks and confront them about this, because the fact is, while we can understand what creates these kinds of, I'll call them brain disorders, that's really what they are, that doesn't excuse them. It doesn't make them okay. It's not a defense for them. It's just an explanation for how it could happen. Shanna, thanks for joining us. You were leaving us on this segment, but coming up, we're going to continue this conversation about whether or not Jodi is like Casey Anthony, and of course, Mark and Pat stay with me, and a close friend of Travis Alexander, who was actually on the phone when his body was discovered, is here with me. We'll hear what he has to say after this.
Were you in love with Travis?
I think that being in love and loving someone are two different things, and there was a point in time where we were in love, but it was short-lived.
Why did you guys break up?
There was sort of a breach of trust in our relationship.
On your part or his part?
Both.
How do you explain that your DNA was found at the murder scene?
Well, I spent a lot of time at his house. But because it's more than just that kind of DNA, there is an explanation for all of that. And that will all be made known very soon. Again, it doesn't prove that I committed a murder.
That was Jodi Arias, accused in the brutal 2008 killing of her former boyfriend, Travis Alexander. And if you want to know how screwed up men are, the males in this room here are like, oh, she's so hot, he shouldn't have tried to break up with her, that's all. Then she wouldn't have killed him. Yeah, Mark, thank you for the thank you guys. They're giving me thumbs up. We should get pictures of these guys. I am back with criminal profiler Pat Brown, criminal defense attorney Mark Eiglarsh, and a close friend of victim Taylor Searle. Taylor, you were actually on the phone with friends when they discovered Travis's body and called the police. Here was the 911 recording from that day.
911 emergency. A friend of ours is dead in his bedroom. His roommate just went in there and said there's lots of blood.
He's dead. He's in his bedroom.
Okay.
In the shower.
Has he been threatened by anyone recently?
Yes, he has. Okay. He has an ex-girlfriend that's been bothering him and following him and slashing tires and things like that.
There's a girl that's been stalking him.
Taylor, it seems like, my God, they jumped immediately to Jodi, right?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much everyone who was close to him had heard him talking for weeks about how, well, in his words, she was stalking him and really wouldn't leave him alone.
My understanding is you two had some very serious concerns about her. And by the way, listen, I'm sorry about your friend. I mean, we're talking about this as though it's, you know, a magazine article. This is your friend, and I just want to say how sorry we are for that. But we are going to be focusing on Jodi and trying to get justice for Travis. So what was it about her that really disturbed you? I understand you had concerns way back.
Well, I never got the best vibes from her, and I really didn't spend too much time with them together. Most of my concerns came from conversations I had with him, and he would just express that he was really anxious to get away from her, and he was really glad when she left the state. A lot of my concerns came from when he kind of read to me some messages he sent to her telling her that he didn't want anything to do with their friendship anymore. And this is after they had broken up and remained friends, and he pretty much told her that he wanted her out of his life. And I just remember telling him after he read to me what he wrote that, you know, aren't you concerned that she's going to try to hurt you or something? Because he had a really good way with words, and he just had a very strongly worded, you know, your parents would be ashamed of you type of a message to her, just stay away from me. And, yeah, I mean, that's the last conversation we had about her, so that's kind of why it was
didn't
first
I
in her
hear
mind.
that some of your friends actually had concerns about just the look in her eye, and that they didn't want their kids around her, and that there was this sort of conversation already underway before he got rid of her?
Yeah, you know, and most of those stories I've heard after the fact, after he was murdered and she was arrested. I didn't hear a lot of that before, so I didn't ever have those kind of concerns for other people's safety as much. But I have heard those people mention that they were really concerned about whether she was a really shady character or whatnot.
Yeah, another example of how Jodi's behavior is oddly similar to Casey Anthony is this clip of her singing in a caroling competition last year. Watch this.
Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth.
Of course, Casey and Jodi both attractive on the surface, elaborate alibis that keep changing, strange behavior in jail. And listen to this, there's a timeline similarity. Kaylee was last seen just 7 days after Travis's body was discovered. Pat, between the singing, the smiling mugshot, do you see similarities between this case, Jodi's, and Casey Anthony?
Well, we have, both of them are manipulators and pathological liars, and it's a really sad thing that people, when they see this, and they do, this is what Travis's friends are saying, we saw this in this woman and we were creeped out. Even Travis was creeped out by the woman, said, I don't want anything to do with you. But the sad part is, usually these kind of people pick nice people to be around. We find the same thing is true with men who kill their girlfriends. The girlfriends are usually very sweet, wonderful people who want to give everyone a chance. So Travis obviously opened that door to her, that day, let her come in. He gave her one more chance. She probably manipulated him. He felt sorry for her. He felt sweet toward her. He wanted whatever old time's sake type of thing. Never, never, never anybody, when you have a pathological lying psychopath in your life, ever let them get near you, and never, never trust them for even 1 second, because this is what can happen. And she obviously brought the weapons with her, so she was planning to kill him if he didn't cooperate.
Mark, the fact that the friends were only creeped out in retrospect, does that make any difference? Does it have any implications in this case, or is it really just going to be about the facts in the room?
Well, I've read that there were some people who were concerned about her behavior even before then. The victim, had new tires after his tires were slashed, and then his new tires the next day were slashed. There were issues concerning this woman before this all happened, not only with the deceased himself, but also the friends, and that will come into play when prosecutors, who I again suggest should not commit to a motive, but will throw this out there as an obvious possible motive. So that's all going to come into play in the trial.
And I think, Pat, last question to you. I think everyone looks around them and go, oh, do I know somebody like this? Somebody like this is not going to be able to maintain a stable relationship. It's not as though you have to worry about, people you've been involved with in your life who are not liars and who've never really exhibited things like this. Is that accurate?
Well, yeah. I mean, basically what we need to look at in our own lives is if we're in a relationship with somebody, they should be cherishing us. They should be treating us well. They shouldn't be doing things that we have to say, please don't do that, and then they do it again with a smirk on their face. If we feel that they are not treating us wonderfully, then there's something wrong with that person. We need to get away from them. And I think we give people too much of a chance. Oh, he just has issues. He has problems. We minimize things. We shouldn't judge him. Yes, you should. You better judge, because unfortunately, this is the kind of thing that can happen in the long run.
I think you're right, Pat. The thing to watch out for is glee when people are harming somebody else. Thank you, Mark, Pat, and Taylor. Thank you for joining us. Your questions about Jodi are next, and coming up, parents kissing their blindfolded and unaware teens on the lips. The school says it was a prank. We've got a whole panel to discuss that, so don't go away.